Since his birth, Louis Drax has been involved in numerous accidents, but has miraculously survived all of them. The incident of his own birth was an unfortunate accident, and at just 4 months old, a lamp fell on him. Louis has also been the victim of spider bites, bee stings, electrocution, food poisoning, and various illnesses, including meningitis. Despite these incidents, he has yet to succumb to death, leading his mother, Natalie, to refer to him as an angel or, perhaps, a cat with 9 lives. On Louis's 9th birthday, he, along with his parents, Natalie and Peter, went on a picnic near a cliff, where Louis fell into the sea. As he lay submerged in the water, a mysterious growling voice told him that this was his 9th life. Detective Dalton and her team soon arrived on the scene, responding to a call from 2 hitchhikers who had spotted Natalie nearby. Although both mother and son were rescued, Peter was nowhere to be found. Louis was taken to the hospital where Dr. Yannick attempted to save him, but tragically, Louis passed away. However, when the body was taken to the morgue, it began convulsing, prompting doctors to bring it back to the emergency room. At the same time, Dr. Alan Pascal was giving a TED Talk on the subject of the brain in a coma. He shared his own experience with sleepwalking as a child and how it inspired his lifelong quest to understand the lost dimension of the brain. After the talk, he received a call from Dr. Yannick asking him to take over Louis's case. Upon his arrival at the hospital, he learned that Louis had been dead for 2 hours, but was now in a coma with numerous broken bones and damaged organs. Dr. Pascal promised Louis's mother, Natalie, that he would bring the boy back, referring to him as a miracle of medicine. While Louis's comatose mind explores his memories, he recalls his therapy sessions with Dr. Perez. Although he was often defiant, Louis confided in Perez as the doctor had promised to keep their conversations confidential. Perez was intrigued by Louis's history of accidents, but the boy refused to answer questions about it. Louis was aware that Perez hypnotized some of his patients, but he was wary of the possibility that Perez might try it on him, given his reputation as a wacko boy. Back in the present, Dr. Pascal and Dr. Yannick discuss the details of Louis's accident. The police believe that Peter may have pushed Louis and is now on the run, so an officer will be posted at the hospital reception. Dr. Pascal continues to talk to Louis, encouraging him to return. Detective Dalton later visits the hospital and shares her findings about Louis, including his history of disruptive behavior and lack of friends, leading other children to call him wacko boy. However, neither she nor Dr. Pascal believe that the accidents were staged for attention. Dr. Pascal also wonders about Peter's potential for violence, but Dalton does not comment. After their meeting, Dr. Pascal takes a walk with Natalie in an attempt to offer her some comfort. In Louis's mind, memories are rapidly flickering, encompassing both joyful moments such as Natalie's care for him and the family's visit to the aquarium, as well as uneasy moments like the arguments between Natalie and Peter. One night, a mysterious voice reveals itself in the form of a large seaweed monster that wants to continue hearing Louis's story. The next tale is about the time Peter took Louis to SeaWorld, where they unexpectedly ran into Peter's ex-wife Caitlin, who had since remarried and now had 3 children. Peter subsequently asked Louis to keep this meeting a secret from Natalie as she was quite delicate. Louis promised he wouldn't reveal the information. However, upon returning home, he revealed the truth, leading to an argument between his parents that Louis tried to ignore. During a subsequent therapy session with Perez, Louis confessed that he had broken his promise to Peter because he realized that his parents didn't love each other, but would not divorce because of him. Louis also acknowledged that Peter was not his biological father. Later, Louis questioned Peter about why he had quit boxing, and Peter explained that he did so at the request of Natalie and because he had become a father. A few days later, Alan and his wife Sophie attended a party hosted by Yannick, where they were surprised to see Natalie also in attendance. Alan couldn't take his eyes off of her, which was noticed by Sophie, who was already concerned about the state of her marriage. When Alan finally had the opportunity to speak with Natalie, Sophie interrupted, causing a palpable tension between them that persisted when they returned home. The following day, Natalie brought Louis's hamster to the hospital in an attempt to connect with her son, despite the fact that animals were generally not permitted. Alan made an exception for her. Natalie claimed that Louis loved his pet, but the truth was that it was his third hamster and he had killed the previous two. When Perez questioned Louis about it, Louis revealed a secret rule that if an individual owned a small creature and it lived for more than 2 years, they were permitted to kill it as the owner. Perez was taken aback by this information and attempted to delve into Louis's relationship with Peter. After the session, Perez expressed his concerns to Natalie, who was offended by Perez's insinuations and decided to discontinue Peter's therapy. As a result, Louis sent Perez a letter filled with hamster droppings as punishment for sharing information that was meant to remain confidential. The seaweed monster listens to Louis's story in the present and ponders why Louis has such disdain for men. Louis responds that men have done harm to his mother. Meanwhile, Alan asks Natalie why she discontinued therapy with Perez prior to the cliff incident. Natalie explains that she had previously thought Perez was trying to drive a wedge between her and her husband, but now she realizes that Perez may have been right. With Alan's understanding, Natalie confides what happened on Louis's birthday. She and Peter got into an argument because Peter was unhappy about her decision to end Louis's therapy. Peter became aggressive, which frightened Louis and caused him to run away to the edge of a cliff. During the attempted rescue, Louis fell and landed in a coma. Alan asked if Peter had ever been violent before, but Natalie avoided the question and told Alan that Peter was the only man she had ever been with since she was 18. Alan believes that Natalie deserves better and the two of them share a kiss, which is visible from the hospital windows, including Louis's room. Louis suddenly sits up, observing the situation with a red eye. Alan and the nurse rush to Louis's side. He manages to utter a mere whisper of "my dad" before Natalie embraces him, causing him to slip back into his comatose state. Louis recalls another significant memory, the evening his parents separated. Peter comes to bid farewell as he is departing with his grandmother to give Natalie some room to breathe, but he assures Louis that he will always be there for him. Alan stays up late performing various tests in an attempt to uncover the cause, but to no avail. He continues his conversation with Louis and even reads him his favorite book. Suddenly, Alan hears a noise and discovers a trail of seaweed, spiders, and mud that leads him to a room where the seaweed monster is hiding. However, before he can act, he wakes up next to Louis, realizing it was all just a dream. A few days later, Alan spends time with Yannick, who notices his exhaustion. Alan confides in Yannick that he has not been sleeping well and that his relationship with Sophie is deteriorating. Yannick ponders if Alan has been seeing Natalie, as rumors of their kiss in the garden have spread throughout the hospital. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted by a call from Natalie, seeking Alan's assistance as she believes Peter has been in her house. When Alan arrives, Natalie shows him a letter she found in her mailbox, written in childish handwriting and signed by Louis. The letter is alarmingly warning Natalie to stay away from Alan as he is interested in her and men always hurt her. If she does not heed the warning, consequences will follow. Alan encourages Natalie to take the letter to the police, and a handwriting analysis reveals that the author was attempting to conceal their identity by writing with their non-dominant hand. Dalton advises Natalie not to remain in her house, and since she lacks family or friends, Alan offers her a room in the hospital. He is also warned by Dalton not to pursue a relationship with Natalie for his own safety. The following day, Alan visits Perez, who is now working at a mental hospital. Perez confesses that he used to believe Louis was purposely causing accidents for attention, but the pieces never fit. He shows Alan a letter with hamster droppings and a message from Louis expressing his hatred towards Perez for betraying his secrets. Alan shows Perez a copy of the letter he received, which Perez confirms closely resembles Louis's writing style. Meanwhile, Louis recalls the memory of the day of the incident. Peter returns for Louis's birthday and brings him a third hamster as a gift. During their car ride, Peter informs Natalie of his desire to have Louis for a 2-week break. Natalie is opposed to the idea but has no grounds to refuse. An argument ensues, ending with Louis offering to help his father with a map. However, instead of roads, Louis discovers a map of his own brain. Later that evening, Sophie visits Alan's office. As he is hardly home, she brings with her a mysterious letter written in the same handwriting as the one Natalie received. Sophie had already opened the letter, leaving in distress upon reading its contents. This letter is also signed by Lewis and requests Alan to leave Sophie alone. Dalton arrives to investigate and Alan confirms that it is impossible for Lewis to have written the letters, as it was just a muscle spasm. As Dalton continues to contemplate new theories, she seeks clarification from Alan regarding Natalie's account of events that occurred during the picnic. She then reveals a shocking truth, that Peter is not Lewis's biological father and that Natalie had given Lewis up for adoption as a baby. After the police leave, Alan confronts Natalie and inquires about her prior dishonesty surrounding her involvement with only one man. Natalie candidly explains that Lewis's conception was not consensual and nearly resulted in their mutual demise. Despite her past experiences with predators, Alan reassures Natalie of her safety in his presence, marking a significant step forward in their relationship. Flashback to Lewis's memory of the picnic. It becomes evident that Peter was indeed upset with Natalie for ending Lewis's therapy. However, he ultimately cut the argument short for the sake of his son. Meanwhile, in the present, Natalie shares with Lewis the story of how she and Peter got together. It all started after a major incident involving baby Lewis, and Natalie reached out to Peter for support while awaiting surgery results. The doctors mistakenly believed Peter to be her husband and they eventually tied the knot a year later. As Peter had developed feelings for Natalie and was no longer in love with Caitlin, Lewis grows frustrated with Natalie's lengthy monologues, leading the seaweed monster to take him away and reveal the truth. As the police investigate the handwritten letters, they instruct hospital staff to write something for handwriting comparison. At this time, a commotion erupts from Lewis's room. Peter's mother, Violet, has arrived to see her grandson, but a heated argument ensues between her and Natalie. Alan takes Violet to his office and learns about Natalie's attempts to prevent Violet from seeing Lewis since Peter's disappearance. Violet believes that Peter loved Lewis more than himself and did not do anything to harm him. She also doubts Natalie's claims of having no family and the forced conception of Lewis. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted by Dalton, who brings grim news: Peter's body has been found in a cave near the cliff. Back in Lewis's mind, the seaweed monster, who is actually a manifestation of Peter, takes Lewis on a swim to a dark cave. Here, Peter explains the true events to Lewis. He loved Caitlin the most, but felt bad for Natalie and her persistent sadness. He divorced Caitlin and married Natalie out of love and a desire to help, but soon discovered that Natalie's tears were a form of manipulation. The only reason he stayed was for the love of Lewis, who he was immensely proud of. As Peter's body undergoes an autopsy, it becomes apparent that he had been dead for days after falling into the water with Lewis and being swept into the cave by the current. The lab results confirm that Peter did not write the letters, adding to the growing list of mysteries surrounding this case. The following day, Alan wakes up after accidentally oversleeping, with the nurse revealing that she was too intimidated to wake him as he had been sleepwalking. Alan went to the desk, wrote a prescription, and then discarded it before returning to his chair. The nurse had retained the prescription, and upon inspection by Alan, he was shocked to observe the handwriting in the letters prescribing dangerous dosages of insulin and chloroform to Natalie. Alan reported the matter to the police, who corroborated the nurse's account through security camera footage. Alan believed that Lewis was manipulating his mind while he slept and attempting to communicate this to them. Dalton deemed Alan's theory to be far-fetched, despite the handwriting matching the letters, and Alan remained excluded as a suspect. He was unfamiliar with the family prior to their arrival at the hospital, and the coincidence of both Lewis and Peter falling that day was not conclusive. With the situation becoming clearer, Alan approached Perez to inquire if he had considered Natalie's involvement in the accident. Perez, while also deeming Alan's theory to be improbable, agreed to hypnotize Alan to verify it. At the hospital, Perez facilitated Alan's hypnosis and led him to a beach-like mind space where Lewis was located. Perez requested to speak to Lewis, and Alan replied in the boy's speech patterns. Using Alan as a medium, Lewis finally disclosed the events of the picnic. He had blown out the candles and wished for Peter to become his real father so he would stay. Afterward, Natalie offered Louis candy, which she refused to share with Peter, and became upset when he attempted to take some, falsely accusing him of being drunk. Peter became suspicious of the candy's contents and became aggressive, resulting in Louis running away in fear and Peter pursuing him to move him away from danger. Natalie then accused Peter of wanting to harm their son, which resulted in her pushing him in order to silence him. Louis then acted in accordance with Natalie's desires and jumped into the water. The truth was that Natalie had always intentionally caused Louis's accident. Once Louis had finished his story, Alan awoke as Louis's heart stopped, but he was revived using a defibrillator. Alan later moved into his own apartment after separating from Sophie and visited Perez's mental hospital, where Natalie had been admitted for Munchausen syndrome by proxy. This condition involved a caregiver creating problems for another person to gain attention from doctors and friends. Initially, Natalie had directly harmed Louis, but as he grew up, Louis learned to comply with her wishes and initiated accidents on his own for her love. Natalie was currently responding well to treatment and was pregnant with Alan's child. Violet was now responsible for Louis's care. In his mind space, Louis wondered if being in a coma was not as bad as it seemed, as he could be with his dad without causing trouble. Peter, however, disagreed, pointing out all the magic and possibilities waiting for him when he woke up. Louis remembered Peter's promise to always be with him and opened his eyes.